The lights in the cantina were dim and smoky. Commander Zethkai sat alone at a corner table, his forearms wrapped around a glass of blue liquid. The drink had gone warm hours ago, but he kept holding it anyway. His gray skin looked pale under the yellow lights, and his large black eyes stared down at the table without really seeing it. Around him, other soldiers from different worlds were laughing and telling stories. A group of red-skinned Morthic warriors were bragging about their latest victory against some mining colony. 3 tall Zeridian officers were sharing jokes about how easy their last battle had been. Everyone seemed happy and proud of their wars. Zethkai was not happy. He was not proud. He had seen things that still made him wake up at night, covered in cold sweat. Things that made him question everything he thought he knew about fighting in war. "Hey, Commander," called out Captain Vex Star, a Morthic with bright yellow eyes. "You have been quiet all night. Tell us about your battles. What great victories has the mighty Valdorian Empire won lately?" The other soldiers turned to look at Zethkai. Some were smiling, expecting another tale of easy conquest. The Valdorian Empire was known across the galaxy for its powerful fleet and advanced weapons. Their battles were usually short and one-sided. Zethkai looked up slowly. His hands were shaking slightly, and he put the glass down on the table with care. "You want to hear about my battles?" he asked in a quiet voice. "Of course," laughed another soldier. "Tell us how you crushed some primitive world. Did they surrender the moment they saw your ships?" Zethkai was silent for a long moment. The cantina grew quieter as more soldiers noticed the strange look on his face. Finally, he spoke. "I will tell you about a species that changed everything I thought I knew about war," he said. "A young race that had barely learned to travel between stars. They called themselves humans." Some of the soldiers chuckled. "Humans?" said Captain Vexstar. "Never heard of them. Probably another weak species that begged for mercy." "That is what we thought too," Zethkai said. His voice was getting stronger now, but there was something dark in it. "We thought they would be like all the others. Small, weak, easy to defeat." He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small datapad. On the screen was an image of a blue and green world. "This is their home planet, Earth. When we first saw it, we thought it looked peaceful. Pretty even. A kind of world that would give up without a fight." The soldiers around him leaned closer to look at the image. It did look peaceful. White clouds swirled over blue oceans and green lands. The humans had only been traveling in space for about 50 years when we found them, Zethkai continued. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were basic. They had no shields worth mentioning. By all the rules of galactic warfare, they should have surrendered the moment they saw our fleet. He touched the datapad again, and the image changed to show human ships. They were indeed primitive-looking compared to the sleek Valdorian vessels. Angular and rough, like they had been built in a hurry. The first human we met was Captain Jake Morrison. He commanded a small patrol ship that we caught near one of their outer colonies. When we ordered him to surrender, do you know what he said? The cantina was completely quiet now. Everyone was listening. "He said no," Zethkai said simply. "Not just no." He laughed. "Then he attacked us. One small human ship against our entire patrol squadron." "He must have been crazy," muttered one of the Zeridian officers. "That is what we thought," Zethkai agreed. "But then we met more humans." Lieutenant Lisa Harper led a group of their fighters against our scouts. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they fought anyway. They used tactics we had never seen before. Instead of fighting like civilized beings, they fought like wild animals. He paused to take a sip of his drink. His hands were steadier now, but his eyes were distant, remembering. The humans formed something they called the Earth Defense Coalition. It was led by people with names like Admiral Ryan Carter and Major Kate Sullivan. They had titles and ranks just like us, but they did not fight like us. They did not think like us. Zethkai looked around at the faces watching him. You have... To understand, in all our wars across the galaxy, there were rules. Unspoken rules that every civilized species followed. You fight until one side clearly wins, then the losing side surrenders. You do not target civilian areas unless absolutely necessary. You do not waste your soldiers' lives in hopeless attacks. You fight with honor. Of course, said Captain Vextar. That is how war works. Not for humans, Zethkai said quietly. Humans do not follow rules. They do not understand the concept of a hopeless fight. And they certainly do not understand honor the way we do. He stood up slowly, his four arms moving to gesture as he spoke. When we first invaded their space, we expected them to see our superior numbers and technology and surrender. We sent them messages explaining how outmatched they were. We showed them recordings of other worlds that had surrendered to us and been treated well. The alien commander's voice grew darker. The humans sent back a message of their own. It was from Admiral Ryan Carter himself. Do you know what he said? The soldiers shook their heads. He said, "Come and take it." Zethkai sat back down heavily. 3 words that should have been meaningless from such a primitive species. But somehow, those 3 words made every warrior in our fleet feel cold. The cantina was so quiet that the only sound was the hum of the air recyclers. Zethkai looked at each of the faces around him. That was the beginning, he said. The beginning of the strangest, most terrifying war any of us had ever fought. A war against creatures that refused to accept they could lose. Zethkai looked around the quiet cantina. Every soldier was watching him, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath and began to speak again. The first real battle happened at a place called Titan Station, he said. It was a human mining base near their home system. Nothing special, just a place where they dug rocks out of asteroids. We thought it would be easy to take. The alien commander pulled up another image on his datapad. It showed a large metal structure floating in space, with smaller ships moving around it like insects. Admiral Ryan Carter was in charge of defending the station. He had maybe 20 ships, all of them old and patched together. Some of them used to be cargo haulers before the war started. They painted weapons on them and called them warships. Captain. Vextar laughed. 20 ships? How many did you have? 200, Zethkai said quietly. Our ships were bigger, faster, and had better weapons. We had shields that could stop anything they could throw at us. By every rule of space combat, the battle should have lasted maybe 10 minutes. He touched the data pad again, and the image changed to show the Valdorian fleet. The ships were sleek and silver, arranged in perfect formation, like a deadly work of art. We sent them the usual message. Surrender now, and we would let them live. Admiral Carter could even keep his rank if he served us well. It was a generous offer. What did he say? Asked one of the Zeridian officers. He said he would give us his answer in person, Zethkai replied. Then he launched every ship he had straight at us. No formation, no strategy. They just charged. Like mad creatures. The soldiers around the table exchanged glances. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Our admiral was so surprised that he almost forgot to give the order to fire. When he did, our weapons lit up the darkness. We expected to see the human ships explode or turn away. Instead, something impossible happened. Zethkai paused, his black eyes reflecting the cantina lights. The humans kept coming. Even when their ships were hit, even when they were on fire, they kept coming. One of their vessels lost its main engine and was spinning out of control. The pilot could have ejected and lived. Instead, he used his last thruster to ram one of our cruisers. The cantina was so quiet that everyone could hear each other breathing. That was when Major Kate Sullivan appeared on our screens. She was leading their marine forces, and she had somehow gotten her troops onto 3 of our ships. We still do not know how they got past our shields. Zethkai's 4 hands clenched into fists as he remembered. Sullivan and her Marines were fighting inside our ships, but they were not fighting like any soldiers we had ever seen. They used the artificial gravity against us, turning it off and on to confuse our troops. They used the air vents to move around like ghosts. When they ran out of ammunition, they used tools and pieces of metal as weapons. He looked directly at Captain Vextar. "Tell me, Captain, what would your soldiers do if the enemy cut the power to your ship?" "Wait for backup power to start, then continue fighting," Vextar replied. "Human Marines fight in the dark," Zethkai said. "They seem to see better in darkness than we did in light. They moved through our ships like they owned them. And when they found our reactor rooms, they did something no civilized being would ever do." "What?" whispered one of the listening soldiers. "They tried to make our ships explode, not just damage them or capture them. They wanted to blow them up with themselves." Still inside, the soldiers gasped. Self-destruction was something that only happened in old stories, not real battles. Major Sullivan personally set charges in the engine room of our flagship. When our security forces cornered her, she smiled and said she would see us in hell. Then she pressed the button. Zethkai stood up again, his gray skin now covered in a thin layer of sweat. The explosion took out 3 of our ships and damaged 5 more, but that was not the worst part. The worst part was that we found out later that Sullivan had escaped. She had set the charges on a timer and used the confusion to get to an escape pod. "How is that possible?" asked a Morthic warrior. "Because humans do not think like us," Zethkai replied. "We plan to win. They plan to win or die trying. And if they cannot win, they plan to hurt you so badly that you will never forget them." He sat back down and continued his story. "The battle lasted 6 hours. We lost 12 ships and over 3,000 soldiers. The humans lost everything. Every ship, every Marine, every pilot. But Admiral Carter's last message to us was not a surrender or a plea for mercy." "What did he say?" asked Captain Vextar, his voice now much quieter than before. "He said, 'This is just the beginning. You have no idea what you have started.'" Zethkai looked at his cold drink and pushed it away. Colonel Ben Torres was the last human to die in that battle. His ship was crippled and surrounded by our forces. We offered to let him surrender. He could have lived to see his family again. Instead, he sent us a message. The alien commander's voice became very quiet. He said, "Tell your emperor that humans do not surrender. Tell him that every world you take will cost you more than the last. Tell him that we will make you pay for every star, every planet, every moon. And tell him that this is what happens when you threaten our children." Zethkai looked up at the faces around him, and Colonel Torres flew his burning ship straight into our command vessel. The explosion could be seen from 3 systems away. The cantina remained silent for a long time. Finally, Captain Vextar spoke in a shaky voice. "But you won the battle." "Yes," Zethkai said sadly. "We won. But when we searched the wreckage of Titan Station, we found something that made us all afraid." "What?" "The humans had evacuated all the civilians before the battle started. Every woman, every child, every old person was gone. They had fought that battle knowing they would all die, just to buy time for their families to escape." He looked around at the other soldiers. "That was when we realized we were not fighting an army. We were fighting an entire species that would rather die than live as slaves." Zethkai picked up his glass and stared into the blue liquid. The other soldiers waited patiently for him to continue. Some of them had moved their chairs closer to hear better. After Titan Station, we thought the humans would finally understand. He said, "We had destroyed their entire fleet. We had proven we were stronger. We expected the next battle to be easier." He shook his head slowly. We were wrong. The next battle was at a place called New Geneva. It was a human colony world with about 2 million people, mostly farmers and factory workers. Nothing that should have worried a professional army. The alien commander touched his datapad again. The image showed a green world with small cities scattered across the surface. General Amy Watson was in charge of defending the planet. She had maybe 10,000 soldiers, most of them local militia, who had never fought in a real war. We had 50,000 troops and enough ships to block out their sun. Captain Vextar leaned forward. 10,000 against 50,000. The battle must have lasted minutes. 6 months, Zefkai said quietly. The entire cantina went silent. Even soldiers at other tables stopped talking and turned to listen. 6 months? Repeated a Zeridian officer. That is impossible. I thought so too, Zefkai replied. But General Watson did something we had never seen before. She turned the entire planet into a weapon. He pulled up more images on his datapad. They showed human civilians working alongside. Soldiers building walls and digging trenches. The humans did not just defend their cities. They defended every building, every street, every room. When we took a factory, they would blow it up. When we captured a bridge, they would destroy it at night and build a new one somewhere else. Zefkai's voice grew darker as he remembered. Watson turned every civilian into a fighter. Old men who used to fix machines became bomb makers. Women who used to teach children became snipers. Even the children helped by carrying messages and supplies. That is against the rules of war, protested Captain Vextar. Civilians are not supposed to fight. Try telling that to humans, Zefkai said. They do not seem to understand the difference between soldiers and civilians when their homes are threatened. He showed them another image. It was a human child, maybe 12 years old, handing ammunition to adult soldiers. This little girl saved my life once. We were pinned down by human fighters in a ruined school. I was wounded and could not move. She crawled over to me under heavy fire and used her own bandages to stop my bleeding. The soldiers looked confused. Why would a human child help you? I asked her the same question, Zefkai said. She told me that her mother was a doctor, and doctors help everyone who is hurt, even enemies. He paused, remembering. Then she picked up a rifle that was bigger than she was and started shooting at my own soldiers to protect me until the medics arrived. The cantina was so quiet that the air recyclers sounded loud. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker was another human who changed how we thought about war. He was an engineer, not a soldier. But when we destroyed all their military equipment, he did something incredible. Zefkai showed them images of strange machines that looked like they had been built from scrap metal. Parker took mining robots and construction machines and turned them into weapons. He used cargo haulers as bombers. He took farming equipment and made it into tanks. Every piece of human technology became dangerous in his hands. How is that possible? Asked a Morthic warrior. Because humans see weapons where we see tools, Zefkai explained. A shovel is not just for digging to them. It is also a club. A truck is not just for carrying things. It is also a bomb if you fill it with explosives. He pulled up another image, showing a human woman in medical clothes. This is Dr. Helen Brooks. She was a combat medic, which means she took care of wounded soldiers. But she did something that confused our entire army. What did she do? She took care of our wounded soldiers too, Zefkai said. When we were hurt, she would treat us the same as her own people. She would risk her life to save ours. The soldiers looked puzzled. This made no sense to them. At first, we thought it was a trick, but it was not. Dr. Brooks really believed that all wounded beings deserved help, even enemies. She would operate on our soldiers to save their lives, then go right back to helping humans fight us. Zeth Kai's voice became soft. Many of our soldiers stopped wanting to fight after Dr. Brooks saved them. How do you kill someone who risked her life to keep you alive? He showed them one more image. It was a human man with calm eyes and a slight smile. Sergeant. Chris Taylor was the strangest human of all. He would send us messages before every battle. Not threats or demands. Instructions? Instructions for what? How to surrender, Zeth Kai said. Taylor would explain exactly how he planned to defeat us. He would tell us where to meet him if we wanted to give up. He would even pack food and medical supplies for prisoners. The alien commander laughed, but it was not a happy sound. The scary part was that Taylor was always right. Everything he said would happen, happened. If he said he would capture our supply depot at dawn, he did. If he said he would cut off our communications at midnight, he did. But if he told you his plans, why could you not stop him? Because knowing what Chris Taylor was going to do and being able to stop him were two very different things. Zeth Kai replied. He was like a force of nature. Polite, friendly, and completely unstoppable. The alien commander looked around at all the faces watching him. After 6 months of fighting on New Geneva, we finally took the planet, but we lost 30,000 soldiers doing it. 30,000 of our best warriors, defeated by farmers and factory workers. He put down his datapad and looked directly at Captain Vex Star. That was when we realized that every human world would be like New Geneva. Every battle would cost us more than the last, and every victory would feel like a defeat. Zeth Kai was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, darker, more afraid. The war with humans was still going on when they came, he said. The Devourers. Several soldiers at nearby tables turned to look. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Devourers. They were the nightmare that lived at the edge of known space. What are Devourers? Asked one of the younger soldiers who had never seen real combat. Captain Vex Star answered before Zeth Kai could speak. Monsters, living ships that eat planets. They turn everything into more of themselves. No one has ever beaten them in a real fight. That is right, Zeth Kai said. The Devourers had been destroying worlds for hundreds of years. They moved like a plague across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. When they reached human space, every military expert predicted the same thing. What? Asked the young soldier. That humanity would be extinct within weeks, Zeth Kai replied. The Devourers had destroyed species much stronger than humans, species with better technology and larger armies. There was no reason to think humans would last any longer than the others. The alien commander pulled out his datapad again. The image showed creatures that looked like giant insects mixed with spaceships. They were black and wet-looking, with too many teeth and claws. The first Devourer ships arrived in human space near a colony called Bright Hope. Captain Ron Michel was stationed there with a small patrol fleet. When he saw the Devourer ships, he did something that surprised everyone. He ran away? Guessed Captain Vex Star. No, Zeth Kai said. He sent a message to every ship in the system. Human ships, Valdorian ships, even pirates and smugglers. The message was simple. Fight together or die alone. The soldiers around the table looked confused. He wanted to work with his enemies. Captain Mitchell said that the Devourers were everyone's problem now. He said that old wars did not matter when facing extinction. And then he did something incredible. Zeth Kai touched the datapad, showing a recording of a human man with tired eyes and gray hair. This is Admiral Beth Lewis. She was the highest-ranking human military officer still alive. When the Devourers appeared, she sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Even us. Even the people she had been fighting for. 2 years. What did she say? She offered to share every piece of information humans had learned about fighting. Every tactic, every strategy, every dirty trick they had used against us. All of it, given freely to anyone who would help fight the Devourers. The cantina had gone completely silent. Even the bartender had stopped serving drinks to listen. At first, no one believed her, Zethkai continued. Why would humans help their enemies? But then the Devourer ships reached Earth's moon, and we saw what humans meant. He showed them images of a battle unlike anything they had ever seen. Human ships fighting alongside Valdorian vessels. Morthic warriors working with human marines. Species that had been enemies for centuries, suddenly fighting side by side. Commander Paul Davis led the ground forces on the moon. He had humans, Valdorians, Zeridians, and even some Morthic troops under his command. No one had ever seen anything like it before. How did they fight together? Asked Captain Vextar. Different species use different tactics. That is where humans proved how dangerous they really are, Zethkai said. They taught us to fight like them, to be unpredictable, to use whatever worked, no matter how dirty or dishonorable it seemed. The alien commander's 4 hands moved as he described the battle. Lieutenant Marie Johnson showed my soldiers how to use Devourer weapons against them. When a Devourer died, she would cut off its claws and teeth and turn them into spears and arrows. She taught us to think like scavengers instead of proper warriors. That sounds disgusting, said one of the Zeridian officers. It was, Zethkai agreed. But it worked. The Devourers had never fought anyone who would use their own body parts as weapons. They did not know how to defend against it. He pulled up another image, showing a human man working alongside alien technicians. Major Kevin Brown was an engineer who worked with our weapons specialists. He showed them how to modify our equipment to hurt Devourers more effectively. Brown taught us that sometimes the best weapon is not the most advanced one, but the one your enemy does not expect. Zethkai paused to take a drink. His hands were shaking again. The worst part was watching humans adapt to fight the Devourers. They studied everything about these creatures. How they moved, how they thought, how they killed. And then humans started using those same methods. What do you mean? Asked the young soldier. Humans learned to be as ruthless as Devourers when they needed to be, Zethkai explained. They would sacrifice entire fleets to save one civilian transport. They would destroy their own worlds rather than let the Devourers have them. They became something almost as terrifying as the monsters they were fighting. The alien commander showed them a final image from the battle. It was a group of mixed human and alien soldiers standing over the body of a massive Devourer. The Battle of Earth's moon lasted 3 days. When it was over, we had done something no one thought possible. We had killed a Devourer hive ship and lived to talk about it. How? Whispered Captain Vextar. By fighting like humans, Zethkai said simply. By refusing to accept that any enemy was too strong to defeat. By working together even when we hated each other. By being willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect what mattered. He looked around at all the faces watching him. After that battle, I realized something terrible. The Devourers were not the most dangerous species in the galaxy anymore. Humans were. Not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they could make anyone else fight, like humans, when the situation was desperate enough. Zethkai put away his datapad and folded his 4 arms. We had created monsters to fight monsters, and the monsters we created were ourselves. Zethkai looked around the cantina one last time. The other soldiers were hanging on every word. their drinks forgotten on the tables. Even the bartender had stopped working to listen. The war against the Devourers lasted 2 years, he said. When it was finally over, the galaxy was a different place. Not just because the monsters were gone, but because of what we had all become. He pulled out his datapad and showed them an image of a large space station. It was built from pieces of different species technology, all welded together. This is Unity Station. Humans built it after the war ended. Admiral Carl Thompson and General Nancy White designed it as a place where all species could meet and work together. But it was not what anyone expected. Captain Vexstar looked at the image closely. It looks like it was built from scrap metal. It was, Zethkai said. Humans took pieces from destroyed Valdorian ships, broken Morthic weapons, damaged Zeridian computers, and even parts from dead Devourer ships. They made something new from all of it. Why would they do that? Asked one of the younger soldiers. Because that is how humans think, Zethkai replied. They do not throw away anything that might be useful. They take broken pieces and make them into something better. The alien commander touched the datapad again, showing an image of humans and aliens working together on the station. Admiral Thompson explained it to me once. He said that every species had something valuable to offer. Our technology, Morthic strength, Zeridian intelligence, human determination. Put them all together, and you get something stronger than any of them alone. Zethkai stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships from a dozen different worlds were docked at the station. When the war ended, everyone expected humans to demand tribute from the species they had saved. That is how these things usually work. The winners take what they want from the losers. But they did not? Asked Captain Vexstar. No, Zethkai said, still looking out the window. Instead, they offered something called the Galactic Defense Initiative. Not a conquest or an empire. A partnership. He turned back to face the other soldiers. I work for humans now. My commanding officer is Colonel Tim Roberts. He is half my age, and from a species that barely knew how to fly when I was already a veteran warrior. And I have never been prouder to serve under anyone. The soldiers looked shocked. A Valdorian commander taking orders from a human was almost unthinkable. Colonel Roberts does not fight like a Valdorian or a Morthic or a Zeridian, Zethkai explained. He fights like a human, which means he fights to protect people, not to gain glory or territory. He showed them another image on his datapad. It was a mixed group of soldiers in matching uniforms. This is my unit. Sergeant Linda Hayes is my second in command. She is human, but she has learned to think like a Valdorian when she needs to. Captain Dan Clark leads our assault teams. He is also human, but he fights alongside Morthic warriors, like they were his brothers. Zethkai sat back down at the table. The strangest part is how humans changed all of us. I used to think that honor meant following rules and fighting fairly. Now I know that real honor means protecting innocent people, no matter what it costs you. But surely humans want something in return for their help, said Captain Vexstar. What do they get from this alliance? Peace, Zethkai said simply. Humans do not want to rule the galaxy. They just want to make sure that no one else has to face extinction alone. He pulled up one final image. It showed children from different species playing together in what looked like a school. This is on Earth. Human children learning alongside young Valdorians, Morthics, and Zeridians. They are growing up together, learning each other's languages and customs. In 20 years, these children will be adults, and they will think of each other as family, not enemies. The cantina was completely silent. The idea was almost too strange to believe. There are still wars in the galaxy, Zethkai continued. Pirates attack merchant ships. Some worlds fight over resources. Criminal organizations cause trouble. But when real threats appear, when entire civilizations are in danger, we all fight together now, Because of humans? Asked the young soldier. Because humans taught us that some things are more important than old grudges, Zethkai replied. They showed us that being strong means protecting the weak, not conquering them. He picked up his glass and looked at the cold blue liquid one more time. Humans are now the most feared military force in known space, not because they have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but because when humans decide to fight for something, they do not stop until they win or die trying. Zethkai stood up and raised his glass. Every species in this cantina has fought humans at some point. We have all seen what they can do when they are angry, but we have also seen what they can do when they decide to protect you instead of fight you. The other soldiers slowly stood up and raised their own glasses. I have seen humans die to save enemies who had been trying to kill them minutes before, Zethkai said. I have seen them give their last food to prisoners of war. I have seen them rebuild worlds that other species would have left in ruins. He looked around at each face. So when someone asks me about human warfare, I tell them this. Humans do not fight to win. They fight to make sure that the people they care about can live in peace. And after fighting alongside them, I can say that there is no cause more worth dying for. Zethkai drained his glass in one swallow. That is why humans are the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy, because they made all of us want to be better than we were. The entire cantina raised their glasses in a silent toast to absent friends, both human and alien, who had taught them that some things were worth any sacrifice.